From a macro level, we're seeing activists deploying funds outside of the US. One, because there's less competition for targets. So there's very few activists that are comfortable operating outside the US effectively. There's also just lower hanging fruit, both from a valuation perspective, but also because there's been a lower volume of campaigns. Fewer boards are thinking like their own activists and taking some of the proactive measures that are necessary to inoculate them from an activist showing up. I think the second part driving it is the homogenization of shareholder registers. So you're seeing a lot of global US-based institutions showing up on top 5 shareholdings of major companies in the UK and Europe and in Asia. So when activists show up, they're meeting a lot of friendly faces that they're used to interacting with and are finding a more receptive audience. I think it varies on the jurisdiction. So if you look at certain countries like the Netherlands, for example, they have a de facto poison pill, which makes it really difficult for activists to pursue certain theses. If you look at, let's say, Italy or Germany, they tend to have large family shareholders as anchor shareholders, making it difficult to do certain things. But what we have seen is that activists that are successful investing outside the US really adapt to local culture issues, whether it's written or unwritten rules about the way to engage with companies. For example, the poison pen letter that would go over well with a NYSE listed company probably isn't going to have the same impact in Japan. So activists are learning that they need to play by the local rules. And I think the thing they're also learning is that the US market is a unique animal in that shareholder interest always reigns supreme. And when you look outside the US, that's almost never the case. So whether it's the government trying to protect a national treasure, employees sitting on the board, or other interests being involved in an activist or M&A outcome, successful activists are going to anticipate those and figure out a way to mitigate those or use them to their advantage. You know, that's not necessarily the way I would characterize it. I think when you're comparing the US and the UK, there's a continuum of receptivity to activists. If you look at it from the US side, we've had about 15 years of interacting with the modern incarnation of activists and are much more comfortable interacting with their ideas, with their tactics. The UK, it's really been about 5 years. So what we're seeing is just different points of acceptance, but the acceptance is narrowing. I think importantly, Brunswick goes out and talks to the investment community every year to gauge their opinions on activists. And what we saw last year was that about 80% of investors in both the US and the UK view activist investors as adding value and not just being disruptive. That's about 10 points higher than Europe and Asia. So you're really seeing neck and neck the investment community start to really put value in what activists are trying to bring to the table.